today, and this really is meant to be a learning opportunity for all of us. And if at any point in time you have questions, really for any of the speakers, as far as I'm concerned, just raise your hand and we can have a dialogue. My name is Brad McMillan. I actually work here at Bradley University. I'm the executive director of the Institute for Principled Leadership. I teach graduate and undergraduate leadership classes. My areas of expertise are public service and nonprofits. And so this kind of all fits with that. But I'm also co-chair of the Change Illinois Board of Directors, which is a statewide board that I've served on for 10 years now. And what we are, and this is our website, I would welcome you to actually go to it at your leisure, because then you could kind of check us out even in more detail. But we really are truly a nonpartisan, bipartisan group of citizens from throughout the state of Illinois that want a better government here in Illinois. And I can honestly say, and I've been involved in this for these kinds of things for close to 30 years now, it's the most diverse group of people I've ever worked with in my life, which is wonderful. So if you, I'm just going to click here on our priorities, and you'll see those pop up. We were just successful in getting legislation passed and the governor to sign an end to prison gerrymandering in the state of Illinois. We're one of 10 states that have been able to accomplish that. What that means is that if somebody is incarcerated, they used to be, during the census, counted where they were incarcerated at rather than the home address for purposes of voting. And so we got the actual end of gerrymandering passed in 2022, but then we needed to have some important implementation legislation passed this year, and it was one of the few things that actually happened in Springfield and actually got done. So we're really proud of our team in accomplishing that. The thing that we're most known for is redistricting reform. We've been leading fair maps efforts here in the state going back to our beginning. There's basically two ways you can change redistricting in Illinois. It's either through a citizen-led petition drive or through a legislative constitutional amendment. They both are constitutional amendments. To make a very long story short, we did 3 citizen petition drives. The last one back in 2016, we went down to Springfield with 600,000 signatures. We got the State Board of Elections to put us on the ballot in November, and then Mike Madigan's attorney, Mike Casper, brought a lawsuit against us again, and the Illinois Supreme Court in a 4-3 really poorly recent decision threw us off the ballot. So after going through 3 attempts and realizing that the Illinois courts weren't going to be kind to us, we decided to try to go the legislative route with the legislative constitutional amendment. We got a supermajority of senators, both Democrats and Republicans, to co-sponsor our Fair Maps legislation, but we could never get the leadership to allow it to be called for a vote. And so it's been frustrating, to be honest. What redistricting reform really does is it creates fair districts, more competition, and we believe accountability in our government, because if you have more people getting into the system and it being more fair and balanced, that's good for our democracy. We're not giving up that fight, but it's a long battle. It took California 3 decades and 6 tries. We're not quite that far down the path before California was able to pass meaningful redistricting reform. They have an independent commission that draws the maps with full transparency. Everything in Illinois is done behind closed doors, and it's done purely for political reasons, not for what's in the best interest of the people. Honestly, Change Illinois is going through a strategic planning process right now. We got real lucky, and the University of Chicago has an incredibly talented group that does pro bono strategic planning. You have to apply, and we got picked. And so we've been through that process this fall, and the final document is being prepared and will probably come to us in October. One of the things that we have a real heart for is building awareness and building our coalition. And Deshawn, who you're going to hear from later, who I think is a wonderful addition to the Change team, she's in charge of building that community coalition throughout the state of Illinois, and she's going to speak about specific efforts that she's involved with. But we want to think outside the box, because the things that we care about, a lot of people care about, and we just have to get people to work together. We think next spring there might be a point of heightened interest in good government and ethics reform because of the trial of Speaker McMillan, which is now scheduled for April 1st, April Fool's Day. And so one of the things that we're talking about, and would appreciate whether this is the kind of issue that excites you. But obviously what happened with Speaker Madigan was he was able to stay in leadership power for a very long period of time, basically 50 years. One person controlling all the levers of government in Illinois. So when he finally got voted out, the new leaders, Don Harmon, the Senate President, and Chris Welch, the new Speaker of the House, they passed a internal rule that they were going to only serve for 10 years in their leadership position. Okay? One of the things that we're considering for building a coalition of people to go down to Springfield and advocate for is to make that law. Because it's just an internal caucus rule, they can change it at any moment. But if it's a statute, and if it's a piece of legislation, and we think that fits well with the Madigan trial being next spring, and all the attention that's going to be building up in the media around that. There was actually a bill in the House this last spring that had bipartisan support to do just that, and it actually passed in the House. It just never got voted on in the Senate. So there's already been some momentum legislatively on that issue, but we think that might be a substantive, tangible thing that we might be able to rally around for the spring. Again, we're not going to give up on redistricting. It's just that the census is now not until 2030 again. And so, we have time to kind of think about what our strategy is going to be on continuing to try to move that forward. I would say this, there seems to be new state legislative members on both sides of the political aisle that are more open to the good government issues that we're trying to advocate for. And one thing I've learned is nothing happens fast in Illinois. And you have to be persistent and patient and keep trying to move the ball forward as best you can. And so, but there's other issues. So we have a inspector general. How many of you even know that we have an inspector general in Illinois? What's former federal appellate judge Mike McMillan, who's in that position now. I know him extremely well. He is a very honest, straight shooting person. He has good relationships across the political aisle. He doesn't have any of the normal tools to do his job that inspector generals in other states have, like subpoena power and some other things. So that's another ethics reform idea that, you know, we're floating around. But a couple other things that are moving high up on the list, and really Sheldon is going to talk about this and Deshaun. But Peoria, through the great efforts of the Green Party, were able to get an advisory referendum passed in the city of Peoria on whether or not we should have an independent commission draw fair maps. And what did that pass by, Sheldon? 70%?
Yeah.
And it's the first tangible vote evidence that we have to give to our lawmakers and say, this is what the people are thinking. That's a pretty high number, 70%. So we're talking about replicating that in other parts of the state, and Deshaun's going to do that. We also have from ranked choice voting is something that Change is really interested in exploring. And Rebecca Williams from FairVote, Illinois is going to come and talk about ranked choice voting and the ins and outs of that and why that might be a good direction for us that care about better government, you know, to get behind as well. But there's a lot of work to do, and we need a lot of people power. I believe firmly in people power. Before I came to Bradley, close to 17 years ago, I was chief of staff to Congressman for 10 years, and so I was deeply involved in public service in that regard. Government can do a lot of good if it's run well and if you get people in it with the right motivations, and that's what we're hoping for. So I don't have anything else on my end unless anybody wants to ask me a question. I was going to turn it over to Sheldon, who is our next presenter. We'll have times for Q&A at the end of
I have a question if I can ask the group. I love to ask questions of people. I'm also an adjunct professor, and I like to get people talking in rooms and don't like to just talk. So I would just be interested to hear from a few people of what are the issues that brought you out today? So is there something that you saw the flyer, if it's a person, but what are some of the things that encouraged you to come out today?
Ranked choice voting. Ballot access. Redistricting.
all the things that we're here to talk about. I know ranked choice voting is something also for you. Yep. Anybody else? You want to share where you came from?
Yes, one of them we don't know.
Okay.
I just moved back from Texas, and I was there for 20 years, and no matter who I tell that I just moved back, that every person says the same thing, which is what, why would you come back here? And that disturbed me greatly.
Can you speak louder, please?
Yes, I came back from Texas, and every single person has asked me, why would you come back to Texas?
I moved here from Texas.
And they probably ask you the same thing, why would you move here from Texas? And so that really disturbed me. And about, in 2001, I took a camper and I traveled around America. And I saw a lot of things. And when I came back, I realized that there was quite a bit missing that other states had. And like roads that were, literally people would say, well, it's cold here. And I love Illinois, this is my home. But I would say Iowa doesn't have roads like this. Indiana doesn't have roads like this. They have snow.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not saying it's just that, but I'm glad I'm here because I don't know anything about redistricting or anything like that. I don't know anything politically yet.
So it's a really good connector. And I'm really glad you brought it up. So how I got involved in all this was after infamous Governor Blagojevich got thrown out of office for corruption. Governor Quinn appointed 15 of us to serve on the Illinois Reform Commission. And I was one of the people chosen in the state. Former Lieutenant Governor Sheila Simon was chosen. It was a very diverse, again, bipartisan group. We held hearings around the state. We had to get back to the governor and the Illinois General Assembly within 100 days of report. What do we do? We're not going to politics. And one of the things that we heard, is we had experts from around the country come and give us testimony, was that because of our reputation for corruption and poor ethics, there were a lot of businesses that were not doing good. And so the truth is that affected all of us. You know, because if you bring more companies and more jobs and you bring more people, and then we're not one of the states that's losing population, we're one of the states that's gaining population. The other thing is, what is hard to do this with people is to connect the dots of why redistricting reform is so important. Because if you have fair competitive elections, then there's going to be more accountability. What ended up happening in California after they passed redistricting was all of a sudden a lot of the serious issues that state was confronting were getting addressed. And good government was functioning at a higher level because the democracy was healthier. It was a more fair, competitive situation. You had a lot of incumbents retire and a lot of new people come in, and political scientists were really able to measure that the cooperation, bipartisanship, and the working together to get things done had all increased because the reform can help the structural election system be healthier. So that's why all these things are tied together, you know. And if we can, I believe if we can make Illinois, if we can improve Illinois government, it'll help. You know, people stay in Illinois and maybe not, maybe you wouldn't hear as much of what you're hearing all the time. So anyway, anybody else as far as what brought you here today? That's what's good. Open it up like that.
So you mentioned that I came here for ranked choice voting, but I'm very familiar with ranked choice voting. Actually, I'm here to meet Rebecca, but also I'm curious about these other things, especially some of the stuff you're going to talk about with townships. So,
Good.
I've been fringy involved in township government in the past.
Are you from this area or?
Yeah, Hannah City.
Okay, yeah, great, excellent.
And frankly, I've lived in a lot, just a side note, I've lived in a lot of different places in the country, East Coast, West Coast, Texas, and then here. And Peoria, I love Peoria. It is the best place I've ever lived.
What'd you say?
I love Peoria.
We're gonna get you on the Peoria Pride commercial. That's good. I like positive.
Write it down.
So this is, looks like your presentation's up here now.
Yep.
Sheldon, if you wanna come up and do your thing, I can come and sit and relax.
And something to drink in your coffee.
And my cookies, that's right.
I'm certainly happy to see everybody here today, and I will make one aside, Brad. Mike Casper took a lawsuit against me and kept me off the ballot also.
Oh, we got something in common, that's
Myself
great.
and the other
So,
members.
just so you know, Mike Casper, I didn't really describe it, is Speaker Mike Madigan's longtime attorney. So, he,
Yeah,
anyway.
so something in common. So,
Can you talk louder?
yes. Okay. So my name is Sheldon Schafer. I've been affiliated with the Peoria Area Green Party for the last 20 years, twice candidate for Congress, once candidate for Secretary of State under the Green Party banner. Professionally, I was adjunct faculty here at Bradley University for over 40 years, teaching introductory astronomy, and I was the astronomer and planetarium director at the Peoria Riverfront Museum and its predecessor for 38 years. And we're interested in all of these things that Brad's been talking about, but one of the things we've done in the Green Party is take advantage of a little known quirk in the Illinois law at the township level. Because ballot access is so limited, and we can hardly get on ballots except for nonpartisan races anymore, one of the initiatives we can successfully do is an element of direct citizen democracy. So here's how to find part of the instructions that we were getting through workshops at our state level. If you go to our homepage and you click on up at the banner there, it says get involved. You come to a page, and it's been since updated by Anna Schiefelbein, by the way, our chair, the chair of the Illinois Green Party. But I did this before she did that. You come to this page, and at the bottom of this page, you see a couple of opportunities here. Presentation strategy to place advisory questions on the ballot via annual township meetings. So this is the cookbook formula and how to find it. And I'm going to borrow some of the slides from that, and then I'm going to tell you how we implemented and a few extra things that we did here in Peoria. So this was prepared originally by the chair of the DuPage County Green Party, Steve Alish. So we give a lot of thanks to him for running workshops over multiple years, telling us about this little known opportunity for direct citizen action. So you can get involved, as I said, you can create a non-binding and no threat of a lawsuit, because it's only an advisory question, but the whole purpose of this is to pass on the results of these advisory question elections to our public officials, as Brad explained. The first evidence by ballot that people are really looking for this. And for ourselves, it was an opportunity to build our own party and hopefully turn out some Green Party voters. But it's direct citizen action. It requires a ballot via the annual township meetings. And it doesn't require a major petition drive. In fact, it's almost too simple. Don't let anybody tell you. Don't tell anybody that I said it's almost too simple. But it's an easy way to get an advisory question on a township ballot. And Illinois law allows at most 3 advisory public questions. So you have an opportunity to be one of those 3, although we found in most cases nobody else knows about this. So we're the only ones advancing township questions at the annual township meeting. Now, in the city of Peoria, the township meeting is part of, or it precedes, the city council meeting. The township of Peoria is almost the same as the city of Peoria. Not completely. And in fact, one of our city councilmen does not live in the township of Peoria, but he lives in the city of Peoria, as he happened to find out, because he didn't know that. But that's mostly the newest sections. A few of the newest sections are not in the township of Peoria. So it's more the old sections of Peoria. So there you see the link, and this link is critical in educating your potential audience. This is the Illinois Consolidated Statutes. And believe me, wading through the Illinois Consolidated Statutes is not fun. But this will take you right to the particular section. At the annual township meeting, this law dates back into the 1800s, held annually on the second Tuesday of each month, which is next year will be April 9th. And there's about 1,000 townships where this will happen. It's a little bit different in the city of Chicago. So for the city of Chicago, you're talking about wards, you're talking about a slightly different date, perhaps a different process. We aren't here in Peoria well advised about the Chicago process, but there is an opportunity. So they hold an annual town meeting. It precedes the city council meeting in our case. The city council is the township board, okay? But in this case, one member of the city council doesn't live in the township, so he's not on the township board. And at this meeting, and this is really critical, registered township voters in attendance have the same voting rights as the elected township officials. In other words, my vote was the same importance as the township board vote. They're just other citizens at that meeting. And so if you want to start doing the math, one of the things you may start thinking of is, well, if you're going to be doing direct citizen voting on this initiative, and you've placed it before the township, all you have to do is bring, well, let's see, 9 city councilmen and 1 mayor, bring 11 friends. And I don't care how else the vote is going, as long as you bring 11 friends, you're probably going to prevail. So it's an interesting opportunity. So you can vote at this meeting for non-binding advisory public questions, it's all spelled out in the Illinois Consolidated Statutes. You want to read how to do it. So in 2022, it was supposed to be for the June 28th primary election. That was a little bit of a hindrance for us last year because we didn't want to be on that extra election. We wanted to be on the November election. This coming year, that won't be a problem because they changed the schedule. But there was an intervening election. We actually had to go to the State Board of Elections and get a ruling by somebody at the State Board of Elections that it would not be for the June 28th primary election. It would be for the November election because the way the law was written, it didn't anticipate another election. So in 2024, you don't have to worry about that. And so for the vote to take place, you need a minimum of 15 registered township voters. How's that for a petition number that's doable? So you might just get 30, which is pretty doable as well. And they have to, if it's a city, a place like Peoria where there's a confusion of overlap, you do have to make sure. I had certain friends who had been interested in Green Party politics before. They weren't in the township of Peoria, they were in the city of Peoria, one of those excluded sections. So you do want to be, just like on any kind of petition, you want to make sure they're registered in the right jurisdiction. And knowing your township boundaries might be a little challenging. So you have to be careful with that. And then you file this request, you are asking to place the question on the ballot. This is probably the only hang-up vote. You're asking to propose placing the question on the ballot that needs to be on the agenda. You have to file the petition no later than March 1st. And it's probably a good idea to get a receipt when you file. Okay, and so it's a simple majority of the voters present at the meeting. A simple majority of the voters present at the meeting. They will check you as you come into the meeting to make sure that you are a registered voter within the township. So the law is very simple, 15 people, and you submit a request to the township clerk to place it on the agenda. And so that's how simple it is. And they don't even suggest a form for the letter or whatever, but in any case, you need to plan. And so, you have to be well aware of all of the one really critical deadline date, and we're going to talk about some other things we did in our planning process. Now, before the meeting starts, they're going to check, as I said, to make sure you're registered, and so you may have to arrive early. It's conducted using Robert's Rules of Order. The township supervisor or clerk, in our case, it's the township clerk, calls the meeting to order, and then nominations for the meeting moderator are accepted. In other words, it's not the chair of the township board who moderates the meeting. You elect your own moderator at the meeting. And so again, you bring your friends. You better bring your friends. Then you can be the moderator of the meeting if you want to. So it's important to know that that's part of what happens. So in our case, the mayor, could have, we actually did let her chair the meeting, but the moderator is key if you think you have maybe a semi-hostile or a hostile environment that you're working in. You want to be sure to have your person elected as moderator and plan on it, because it should be somebody who knows Robert's Rules of Order, who's watched the city or township board meeting before to see what the procedure is. Normally, a township meeting calls itself to order, they pass the budget, and they close the meeting. There's no other items of business for most townships. This is a second item. And it's likely that your township officials won't even know that this is an option. They won't even know this is an option. They don't know the law. That's why you'd better have the Illinois Consolidated Statute section printed out and a link for them to check it out. And you should also be aware there can be other people in the room, so that if, you have 30 people who aren't your friends there, you don't know how they're going to vote. They've never even heard of this probably, so you might have a few extra friends come. But be sure that the moderator vote is accurately counted, okay? And by a raise of hands, you count it carefully to make sure you get your moderator in, or defer if you're not going to put your own moderator in. But then the moderator that you've elected from your group presides over the meeting and works the way through the agenda, which is normally one item, and now it's, if you have a township question, it's 2 items. So when the agenda item to decide is taken up, the moderator should allow some period for public comments. You want to be, again, aware of the procedures for these kinds of things. There is a time allowed for public comments, and you can also try and figure out if there's other people in the room besides your friends and the township council, what the sense might be. So the moderator will basically run the meeting and get the sense of the room. And again, when it comes up, when you do the final vote, make sure that it's counted carefully and accurately. So that's the basic format. Very simple. 15 questions or 15 signatures with a question proposed, submitted to the township clerk, and by March 1st, and then you come to the meeting with friends to implement it. So in December, this was the time scale for how we pursued this. In December, we chose the question for the public referendum, and right now we're working on our next township question. This next year, we're going to be working on a ranked choice voting question, and we do want to be consulting our other guest here a little bit on that to consider how local it should be or shouldn't be. Since this was the first time, we picked, as I said, the redistricting question because one, it was well known due to the efforts to change Illinois. I wanted to pick a simple question that could create broad support beyond members of our party, and this is certainly a question that has a lot of appeal, as we sure found out. It shouldn't require a lot of education of the public if you don't have any way to spread that word, and we didn't. So there's different ways to approach that, but in the case of the gerrymandering, we referred to some of the same verbiage that had been used by Change Illinois and the League of Women Voters, and made direct reference to that language to provide that quick educational component. In doing so, we established our presence as a credible players in the political field. At least we hope we did. So we can come back, and now this year we can try a little more complex advisory question. And ranked choice voting is certainly more complex in concept. So we picked the question in December. In January, I contacted the township clerk. And again, these folks in your various townships may not even be aware of this particular element of the Illinois Consolidated Statutes subsection on townships. So I stated our intention to present the petition to her, and also gave her the reference to the Illinois code so that she'd have that as a reference. Again, we plan on having to educate your township folks. And we had to, in our case, last year, last time we had to raise the question with the state board, and actually the clerk helped us in this, raising the question with the state board. So she became an active part of our alliance in a sense. We were both working on the state board, whether this would apply to this special primary election, which normally wasn't there, or whether it would apply to the November ballot. Why the November ballot? Because a lot of people come out for the November ballot, and people of party affiliated and independents. And we provided a draft of the petition, and with the petition question, and she'd asked for this, and we gladly gave it. Now, although there's no form for this, there's no form required for this, we use the standard form that is used for general petition. So we created what we thought would be to her a familiar form. And the question is, so in the first part of here, we refer to the section of the Illinois Code so that it's in ready reference. Because again, you're doing an education process on here. We're telling when the township meeting is going to be, and then we show the following advisory question be placed on the ballot. We're trying to sound official, and then repeat ourselves one more time. Here's the section of the Illinois Code that you'd better be prepared to address. And our wording: should the state of Illinois adopt an independent citizens commission for the federal and state redistricting process that would be guided by principles established in fair maps initiatives. Again, some of the wording we borrowed there from Change Illinois and the League of Women Voters to give some reference to it and some broad appeal. And then the petition form we used, again, when we use for ballot measures, you don't have to be so formal, but why wouldn't you when you can? It just makes it seem more credible in our estimation. In February, I arranged a meeting, a face-to-face meeting with the township clerk. And we turned in the petitions well in advance of the March 1st deadline. And as I said, required 15, we had 30 signatures, not a really high bar. And in our case, the Peoria city clerk is the same as the township clerk, but it's certainly different if you have a freestanding township that isn't part of a city. And we discussed at that meeting verifying the signatures and her role in verifying the registration of voters as they come in to the meeting. And she provided me a map, which was handy, so that if there's any question, in fact, that's not a bad idea, ask your township to provide you the map of where the boundaries are. Then they can't say, well, you didn't follow the map. Hey, they're supposed to do this. And she did, gladly. It turned out she had lived 3 doors down from me a few years earlier. We didn't know each other, but on the same street, but we were sort of neighbors. That always helps. you can't always have that juxtaposition of residents, of course. And we discussed the process of the township meeting and the verification of the electors, and we got a receipt. You definitely want to get a receipt for submitting this petition to the township clerk. In March, we contacted selected township board members to let them know of our proposal. We needed to introduce this concept, which was totally new to them. They'd never heard of it, or one of them had heard of it, but they'd only seen it used once 20 years ago or something. So this is a new process. We stressed the scope of the questions allowed by section 205, because that is a concern that was raised in another township initiative by one of our chapters over in Western Illinois. The relevance, the scope of questions allowed is pretty broad. It's pretty broad. And stress the direct citizen democracy aspect of this. Again, these are one of the things that hopefully your elected officials like to hear you talk about, direct citizen democracy. And the ones that we spoke to offered their support and agreed to spread the word. But probably the more township officials you can have face-to-face meetings with, the better, because everybody needs to be educated on this little-known piece of Illinois Township Code. And then the township took care of required meeting notice was published in the Peoria Journal-Star by the township clerk. And probably this has to be noted that this has to be announced in a newspaper. Seems sort of old-fashioned, doesn't it, to print something in a newspaper. Maybe she would be doing this anyway, we think, because she's calling for the township meeting. But it gave me a chance then to see it in the Journal-Star and make sure that we were on the agenda. And then in April, we contacted the friends we're going to bring along to our meeting to ensure attendance, proper attendance. We provided a summary for all of the people we're bringing along. So you get a lot of education as you go along with this. Let everybody know what's about to happen. We did release a press release to the media. And we contacted a couple more township board members. And here's what we said to them there in the bottom. Again, trying to keep it simple and short. For a simple question like this, it was probably easier, ranked choice voting. We're still debating how much education we're going to have to do within the body of the question. But it is an advisory question. And then at the April 12th meeting in Peoria City Council chambers, we allowed the mayor to be selected as moderator because we already knew that she was on our side. And that's through our prior contacts. Had we not, but she did offer, because she was familiar with this by this point, it's nice to know that people are educating themselves. She did offer to let us nominate a moderator. But that certainly is one option you can take advantage of or not. And then I spoke on the proposal, and the vote was 28 yes, 0 nays. We didn't need to bring any friends. But it's nice to have this direct citizen democracy. And this is just to put it on the ballot. And that's one of the things you're telling all your representatives, your township board members. They're not voting on this. They're voting on whether to allow the citizens to vote on this. And, so we were part of the formal agenda. And post-meeting follow-up, we had some follow-up with Brad. And in fact, Brad had seen our initiative and already engaged Change Illinois, those folks in this township area, so that they would be prepared to vote on it. Because post-meeting, you're going to have it on the ballot. We were lucky that the League of Women Voters was at the meeting for another reason, but it didn't hurt. In fact, I was thinking, gee, you should have maybe called the League of Women Voters to be at these meetings. And post-meeting follow-up, you also have to make sure and check at the township clerk without sounding like you're double-checking and triple-checking on her, but to make sure that she then submits it to the Board of Elections. because it does have to be submitted to the Board of Elections properly. And I'd also talk to the chair of the Board of Elections to make sure they were expecting it. Getting something out of the blue. We did discover that some townships in Rock Island County did not allow the township question to be put on the agenda. They said the scope of the question was beyond the scope of the law. They made a ruling. Technically, I think that they could be sued for that because what they did was illegal, but they refused the petition. They refused to accept the petition. They refused to allow it to advance to the township meeting itself, in which case you couldn't have your vote to put it on. So there's the possible hang-up. There's where the importance of talking to township officials in advance and educating them on the process and the scope of the questions, since they thought the scope of the questions submitted in Rock Island County, and I don't know the specific township, but they said they were beyond the scope. So establishing and educating establishing a relationship and educating your township officials is important as much as you can do about this, because nobody hardly knows this law exists. Did any of you who weren't?
No.
No. And you said you worked in township?
I've been involved in township government.
Yeah.
And
Nobody
I did not
knows
know
this law
this.
exists.
At the annual meeting, they sat down and talked about salaries and different things because you're always voting on the salaries of whoever might get elected next.
Right. Exactly.
So that was pretty much the business. You very rarely had any constituents at these meetings.
Exactly. It's a budget meeting.
Yeah, budget.
Introduce the budget, discuss, pass the budget. Done.
So do you think that's why they declared it beyond the scope of the meeting, because within their narrow purview, that was the only thing that was supposed to happen?
Could be. Or they just didn't like.
Or they just hated you?
They just didn't like.
They didn't like your face.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So I want to understand, so you get this question passed through the township, it goes on the ballot, it's just for Peoria Township to vote on?
Yeah, so it appeared on the ballot of Peoria, that Peoria Township voters only saw this question.
Okay, so the verbiage was broad to the point of the whole state.
Sure.
And so how does that then get communicated to Springfield?
By people like Brad. And believe me, he's going to be compiling all the successful township votes and saying, look at all these townships where we actually have a vote saying this is what we want. Get on the stick, legislators. Yeah, and that's the final step, because it's an advisory question beyond the scope of the township.
And I know the boundaries are different, Sheldon, the township and the city, but there were a lot of people that voted on this question. How many total voted on the advisory? It was a large part of the city of Peoria.
I think it was like 18,000, I believe, voted on this.
Okay.
Which was for, within the city of Peoria.
I was asking how many people actually voted on the advisory referendum question in the city of Peoria. So he said 18,000.
Which is pretty good.
So then how does that then get broadcast to the whole state to vote on? Or is that then you have to work with Springfield and work on Springfield?
Yeah, so what we do, we have obviously ongoing communications and relationships with our state lawmakers. And so, I immediately communicated this to the ones in central Illinois, the outcome of this. But Sheldon's right, and Deshaun's gonna talk about this. We have a strategy to replicate this.
Okay.
Because the more evidence that we could show of the strong voter support behind having an independent commission draw the maps, I think the stronger case we're going to be able to make for them to take action.
Yeah.
So,
and in fact, one of the outcomes of this is exactly what's happening right now. That we see how this could be replicated at the state level. Imagine 1,000 townships voting on this.
yeah, go ahead, ma'am.
How are non-votes interpreted? If they don't vote on it at all, you have your yes or your no votes.
I don't remember what the undervote was on this. I don't think there was a big undervote.
It was the last question on the ballot. So I'm sure there was somewhat of an undervote, but I don't know what that percentage was.
Are they interpreted as
no votes or?
You know, in this case, I don't think the undervote was, you know, I always look at the undervote. I'm always interested in that particular question. And in other races, especially the undervote in presidential races, for example, that's a very interesting statistic that doesn't get reported on. But I don't remember it was substantially different than any of the races undervotes. So in this case, I don't think there was anything to note. Now, maybe we did a good job of phrasing the questions and relying on prior initiatives which had raised this point already, and we had reasonably educated voters going to this poll, so people could sort of figure it out for themselves. On ranked choice voting, yeah, we might have a stronger undervote. Any other questions on this? Yeah,
How many townships are in Illinois?
about 1,000. You know, Illinois is the state of legislative districts and bodies of government. We all know that. Dave?
As a point of information, townships are among the oldest form of government in the United States. Back when there were colonies, they began townships. So every colony had townships. The New England town meetings were the fundamental basis that created townships when the U.S. Constitution was formed. So every state in the Union had townships. I don't know if there's a state that's eliminated them, but it was this fundamental, basic foundation of democracy. You gathered together in a group that was presumably not too big and not too small, just right, so you could have conversations and votes and decisions and that would impact on your life, whether it was budget or some of these more political questions. So the history of townships goes all the way back. So, just FYI.
And I wanted to just make a brief note about another unrelated topic to this, but related to ranked choice voting, ballot access. It's not really the topic of this, but since I had the floor, I told Fred I was going to take it briefly. Yeah, ballot access. Well, it's one of your multi-point agenda. What point is ranked choice voting if you can only have two candidates going against each other? Ranked choice voting is so valuable if you then use it to engage multiple voices. And here's where we are with voting in Illinois in terms of ballot access and what makes it so hard. This is a draft that Anna had prepared before, so it's just taken from the new handbook. But look at Peoria here specifically. Okay, in the 16th district. So a Democrat needs 560 signatures. A Republican needs 984. Over the size of it, 250,000 people in a district, that's, not hard to do at all, especially for established party with networks and, chairs and everything. But look what's required of an independent. In other words, they've been through a rules change which was not known to our legislators, but done probably by Mike Madigan privately, because I talked to my legislators, they had no idea this happened. You need between 15 and 24,000 signatures to get on the ballot as an independent. Now, or 15,000 as a third party, if you want to declare you're forming a third party. 15,000 signatures is about, well, because I ran for Congress twice, that's more signatures than votes you'd get the first time around. One of the reasons for having multiple voices is to, in the case of a party, to build a party by building upon numbers upon numbers. But you can never even get on the ballot your first time around if you need that many signatures in that kind of a isolated space. 15,000 signatures might be appropriate statewide, although it's still a hard challenge for a small party without a lot of infrastructure and resources. It's even harder for independents unless they're independently wealthy without infrastructure. So look at those ballot numbers, and that's similar. It's worse in some jurisdictions, but it's at least that bad everywhere. So why do we have no independents in Illinois? That's why we have no independents in Illinois.
So why is it different at all, even between parties?
It's based on, because they have primaries, so it's based on a percentage of their primary voters.
So the 16th district, just so you know, that's Durham-Lart's district, isn't it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a district that has more Republican primary voters than Democratic primary voters, because it's a very rural district, and so that's why there's more Republican
Yeah.
signatures required there.
So independents and third parties have been legislated out of existence in this state. So along with ranked choice voting, which we really, really want, you need to change ballot access, or it's not going to make much difference because you're not going to be able to get on the ballot anyway. And this is how bad it is for folks like ourselves who'd like, I got 6% of the vote with only spending $4,000, but I was legislated out. And yeah.
Okay, excuse my ignorance, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, it's based on a percentage of the party, primary party. So why are the independent and new party so much higher?
Because they don't want us to run.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a percentage of all the voters
It's
in
rigged.
that jurisdiction.
No. It doesn't make any common sense. Doesn't make any common sense. It's all political.
But how can it do that? Who does that?
The Mike Madigan did.
Mike Madigan.
And so few people know this happened, so like people in this room, this is probably the first time you've seen that, so you don't even realize it's happening because it's something you just don't know. So now that you know, it's like, why is this happening? But so
Yeah.
few people even know that this is the thing, you know.
Right. I mean, and just like there's resistance to change because it might make things more fair, just for the fair maps. Well, this would make things even more challenging if you could have 3 or 4 independent voices running with ranked choice voting. Then you wouldn't have a lock on your party outcomes. Yeah, but right now, you know, we can't exist. We can do, but for some reason, we still only need 15 signatures to get on a township ballot. So there you go. There's where we can still be direct citizen democracy active.
Thanks, Sheldon.
Certainly.
Any additional questions or any more shock and awe? This is full of shock.
I just Googled that.
But that is the exact reason why we're here.
You need my password, or you'll be able to get to the other one.
Okay, so I want to welcome Rebecca, who is from FairVote, who is going to talk about ranked choice voting. But hopefully, you know, that is the reason why we are here, is to be in spaces, to learn things that we didn't know. There's so much unknown and so much that happens in government by people who have not been elected into these roles, who make these decisions often. But that's why we want to be in spaces as much as possible to have these kind of conversations. So really excited for Rebecca to come talk about ranked choice voting.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you, Better. And thank you to Change Illinois and to Dushan just for organizing this event where we can get together and learn about these new, important, kind of wonky policies, but they're really important for bettering our government. So first thing I'd just like to ask before I start a presentation on ranked choice voting is how many people here, just show of hands, how many people here are like familiar with ranked choice voting and think you understand it pretty well? Okay, that's a pretty good percentage of the room. Cool, yeah. But yeah, so we'll see. So I'll educate some new people out today, and yeah, we'll see if like you still might have any questions. But yeah, and thank you, I think it was Sheldon, for, you know, speaking to some of the work that we can do to promote that. I will say that in Berwyn, the Berwyn Township, a couple years ago actually used this exact tactic. They got an advisory referendum just asking the Township of Berwyn if they think Illinois should adopt ranked choice voting, and it passed with like 82%. So it's definitely something that can be great in showing that support. Yeah, let's get into it. So we think that voting needs an upgrade. The sad truth of America today is that the country is too polarized. Our politics are broken, and you know, if you have been feeling this way, this is how, you know, this is how most people are feeling. And the thing is, if you meet the average person, most of us are not super extreme on the left or the right. However, that's what we tend to get in our government a lot, and I'm going to speak to why that is. So, we have clearly become a divided nation, and a huge part of that is because of the way we vote. The way we vote forces us into binary choices, and it drives division. And a big reason for that is because throughout Illinois, most of our offices, whether those are in municipalities, statewide offices, whatever, most of them only need a plurality to win. So that means you don't actually need a majority, 50% plus one, you just need to get the most votes. So depending on how broad your field is, how many candidates you're running with, that could be well under 50%. So this forces kind of weird calculations for both the voter and for the candidate. So for voters, we think of things like, does my favorite candidate actually have a chance of winning? We think, will I be wasting my vote if I vote for them? We see this a lot with third parties, unfortunately, and it makes it so we really have no idea how much support different third parties have when they do manage to get on the ballot, because people don't want to waste their vote by voting for them. And then from the candidates' end, they ask questions like, and they strategize with their campaign team, what's the least number of voters I need to win? That's not how our elected officials should be thinking. They should be wanting to get support from the majority of the community, building that broad consensus. But with plurality voting, or with, you know, our plurality first past the post system, it does not make it so they have to do that. And often one of the easiest ways for them to win is really just figure out who their villain is. Figure out the person they need to attack to say, you know, even if you don't super love me, this guy's the worst ever, so you need to vote for me so he doesn't get in office. So with every election, we see the same thing, especially, you know, at the presidential level. People say, you know, if you're on the right, it's, oh no, don't vote for the libertarian, then the evil Democrat is going to win. If you have Democrat friends and they learn you're thinking about voting Green Party, they'll say, don't do it, the evil Republican is going to win. And of course, you know, people on either side, if they're thinking about third party, they probably do have a preferred second choice, and they don't want to inadvertently hope their least favorite win. So this is a real problem. It makes it so, again, we end up with binary choices most of the time, and it makes it so for candidates, rather than discussing the issues, they're just painting their opponents as like the worst thing ever. I recently watched the first primary debate for the Republican side, and it was just a lot of mudslinging at the other candidates, and I couldn't help but think, how much different would this be with ranked choice voting when they understand they're jockeying for ranked positions as opposed to just jockeying for that one vote that everyone has. it would be a lot more focus on issues. So just to illustrate this with real numbers, this is often the kind of stuff we see in Illinois. And Sheldon was absolutely right that we do need to work hard on getting ballot access, because we want independents, we want Green Party, Libertarians, whoever, to be able to get on the ballot. But we do still sometimes have races where you get quite a few candidates on the ballot. We see that in primaries, we see that in mayoral races, things like that. And that's where it can happen, where you have people winning out of that primary with such a small percentage of support. So, not saying anything against Robin Gable, but about 73% of people didn't vote for her, but she went on to win, and she's still in office today. We see this in plenty of Republican primaries as well. So again, about 67% of people did not vote for this gentleman, Paul Jacobs, but he went on to win office. And we also have to keep in mind, in the primaries, it's already such a small subset of the general voting population that if we are sending candidates from the primary to the general and they didn't even get majority support from that primary voter subset, they very well may be not a great candidate at all in the general election. And that is what lends to so much frustration that we see among the regular voter, where they're going to try to figure out who they're voting for, and they say, all these candidates are kind of awful. Well, it's because when they're getting through that primary process, they're not even really having to build majority consensus within their own party's community. And even when we have nonpartisan elections, so those were for, statewide offices, but even when we have nonpartisan elections for something like a city municipal mayoral race, you can still get really crazy results. So it was actually pretty similar in this last one. We just haven't updated the slide. But this one illustrates it really well because there were 14 candidates on the ballot in 2019. Now, it's not bad that 14 people are running. That's great. That's a lot of diversity of ideas. However, when the voters only have one choice, then you, of course, no one's going to get the majority. So in Chicago, they're one of the few places that does runoffs. They do require a majority to win. But so Tony Preckwinkle and Lori Lightfoot, they went to the runoff with not even having captured 50% between them of the vote. So we want to prevent stuff like that from happening. We want to be able to see where the true majority support is. So what we're working with right now, it's just not democracy. This isn't how it should be. But fortunately, we do have a better way, and that's ranked choice voting, which I know many of you here know about. So with ranked choice voting, it considers not only your first choice, but your second, third, fourth choice, however many, that particular software system allows up to. And just to be clear, you don't have to rank multiple candidates with ranked choice voting, but you have the option. So if you really just like one person and that's it, that's fine. But a lot of times people do want to express support for multiple candidates. So that's what you can do here. So just an illustration of how this works. Let's say we've got all these characters running for the mayor of Toontown. So we've got 5 candidates across them. Again, it's pretty hard to get to that 50% plus 1 when you've got 5 candidates in the field. So in a regular election like we have right now, Daffy Duck would win with 38%. But this is a ranked choice voting election. So what do? We eliminate the candidate that had the lowest amount of votes. So Wile E. Coyote, he was kind of a divisive figure. He turned a lot of people off. So he didn't get too many votes. But for those who did like Wiley Coyote, they had some second choices, and those were kind of split across the field. So we add the second choices up. We see Daffy Duck has increased by 1%. You know, everyone's got a few more, but there's still nowhere near a majority for anyone. So we've got to repeat this process. So now we're going to eliminate Sylvester the cat with his 12%. So again, we look at it, does anyone have a majority? Nope, we've got to do this again. Now it's Roadrunner that has to go. And in the end, we see that Bugs Bunny is actually our winner. So Bugs Bunny was the one where, even though Daffy Duck got a good amount of support from, yeah, he got like that 36% at first, he ultimately, Bugs Bunny did a better job of reaching out through the community and getting those second and third choice votes. And just to be clear, results like this are sort of rare. Most of the time in ranked choice voting elections, the person who has the most votes at first, they prevail. Usually they've got enough like positive sentiment and support from the community that they will get to that majority. But again, what ranked choice voting does is it prevents a candidate who might be a little more extreme, might just have a base, but they're never going to have support from the majority of the community, prevents them from winning. So, yeah, Bugs Bunny wins. So, just to kind of reiterate some of the benefits of ranked choice voting, we've got you're voting for a candidate, not against, like I was talking about with presidential elections and everything. Often you're going to have more than 2 viable options. Not always, because of the ballot access issues, but certainly in a lot of mayoral races and primaries, things like that, you're going to have several options. In the places that are currently doing runoffs, we no longer need those runoffs. You've probably heard that this is often called instant runoff voting, because you just tabulate that all in one election and it's a lot more fair. And then negative campaigning is no longer a good plan. Even if you can't be a voter's first choice, you'd love to be their second or even their third. So you're going to focus on why you're great. You're going to focus on the issues. Maybe you're going to say, hey, here's where I agree with such and such candidate, here's where we disagree, but you're not looking to villainize anyone and turn off voters that might be a fan of them. So it just really creates a more positive campaigning atmosphere in some of the areas where we've seen it used, and there's no more vote splitting. So if you've got several candidates that are similar and they're popular within the community, you don't have to worry that now they're going to split the vote and none of them are going to get elected, because you can just rank those candidates 1, 2, 3. Again, if they're popular, one of them will get elected. So, as I was just saying, leads to more positive campaigning. We've seen this especially on the local level. I actually don't know how true this is going to be on like national level. I think candidates are just so used to competing that way that it might take a while to change that behavior. But certainly in municipalities where most of the ranked choice voting adoption has happened, we have seen that positive shift. So some data from New York City, first time it was used there, many people said, oh, it was about the same, but for those who noticed a difference, it was overwhelmingly more positive. And yeah, we have the former mayor of Minneapolis saying that as well, just because it's not a smart strategy. There's even been things like joint campaigning videos, which is kind of crazy to think about. For anyone who kind of hasn't heard of this before, you might be thinking, okay, this sounds good, but do people actually understand it? Is this easy? Is this too complicated? Fortunately, all of the data we have from all the places that are using it shows that when voters start using it, they think it's simple, they like it, they want to keep using it. So all we have to do is make sure there's a good voter education campaign in place before it's first used, and then people across all demographics, they understand it and want to keep using it. Another nice side effect of ranked choice voting is we have seen that it's really benefited women and candidates of color. It's not that it was set up this way, but what ranked choice voting does is it allows people to express their true preferences. It shows us the true support, majority support from the community. So what we think is happening here is when people are really free to rank who their most favorite is without worrying that they're wasting the vote or splitting the vote or doing anything like that, we see more candidates of color and women get elected. There are places like throughout the San Francisco Bay Area, Minneapolis, places like that who've been using it for over a decade, so we've got really good data. And not that New York City has been using it for too long, but they have, they actually got, I think it was a majority female city council, like slight majority, and the most diverse city council they've ever had when they started using ranked choice voting. So I think what we're seeing is that these are candidates that should be elected more often, but our current voting system is not encouraging that. Just one second. It also makes it so candidates are no longer discouraged from running. Sometimes in our current system, depending on where you are, a candidate might want to run and the party might say, hey, don't run, you're gonna spoil the vote. Like it's gonna be split, you need to wait your turn. That's no longer a thing anymore, which I think is really positive because again, we get that diversity of ideas. Did you have a question?
Well, I was just wondering with this characteristic that you're showing here. I know that sometimes when I get turned off in an election, I just feel like it's a football game. You have to root for your quarterback, whether he's good, bad, or indifferent. And if you're not really interested in either of the two teams, you just don't want to participate. It's like, I'm not a football fan, I don't go to football games. If I see something like, that looks like a football game in elections, I'm just not going to vote. It doesn't mean anything to me because I don't like either one of those.
Yeah, so I mean, and certainly some people might just still not vote in elections if they think there are no good candidates. But what we're hoping is that ranked choice voting is helping put more good candidates forward.
Well, what the thing is that it puts the focus on governance instead of our team winning or their team winning.
Absolutely.
It's not a team sport anymore, so you have to look beyond the actual vote and say, well, what is the voting about? And it's about governance. Who can govern better, not who's the better quarterback.
Definitely. And for the places where a third party candidate does manage to get on those ballots, then again, people are a lot more freed up to really express their support for those third party candidates without it being a waste or anything. So yeah, just one second. So just an example of this. This was from the first time that New York used ranked choice voting. So she did not win, but ultimately one of the black candidates, Eric Adams, if I'm remembering correctly, yeah. Eric Adams, he did win in New York City, and again, they were worried you're gonna split the black vote. That happens often without our city, and especially if they're pretty similar, but that didn't happen here. Did you have a question?
Yes, I was curious about whether or not there are any variations to the program, or is it always exactly as what you're presenting to us?
There are some variations to it. I'll finish this before I get into that. But yeah, there's like one main variation. But yeah, so the other benefit is that if you are in a place that uses runoffs, like Chicago does, like we have some cities where they don't necessarily, they don't call them runoffs, but if they have over a certain amount of candidates running, they force a primary. That was the case in Evanston, which just recently voted to adopt ranked choice voting. So any cities that have a structure where you potentially have 2 elections, you no longer have to do that with ranked choice voting. So it can save a lot of money. So this is an example of the true savings of places that have adopted it. About 4.7 million saved. I know in Chicago they spend somewhere between like 3.2 and 3.4 million on their runoff elections, and that's just the city. That's not to mention what all of the extra funds that the candidates are having to put forward, which of course we know can be really difficult if you're a newer candidate, and it just sort of injects uncertainty into the campaign. If with ranked choice voting, we know when the election's done. So at FairVote Illinois, we are the group that is really, primarily pushing to get this for Illinois. And of course, we have wonderful partners. Change Illinois has been awesome about helping us in any way they can and just helping to amplify our message and everything. But yeah, so if you are wanting to stay in touch with our work, should actually should pass this around. I have a sign-up sheet. Not that you have to do that, but if you're like, yeah, I want to continue to see what you guys are doing, want to see how, just get our newsletter, see how you could help, whatever, then feel free to join our mailing list. Sign up with us. We send like 1 to 3 emails a month. And if you really want to get involved, you can check the volunteer box on there so that we know you're interested in actually volunteering. If you want, you could just follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. So always follow us on there. That just helps to get our message out to more people, see what we're doing. And if you are part of an organization that you think would like to have us come speak about ranked choice voting, please let me know. Get us in contact with them. We love doing presentations like this so that we can really get into the details of how it works, make sure people understand it well. So that's another great way to help if you're so inclined. And then, of course, another wonderful way to help is if you would like to donate to our organization. That is great. Keeps the lights on, keeps us being able to go across the state and talk about this. And, of course, if we have an actual campaign for a city or anything, that costs a lot of money too. So I want to just talk a bit about our current focuses that FairVote Illinois is working on. So I kind of alluded to it, but last November we had our first win in Illinois, and that was getting it for the city of Evanston. So the way we did that is we lobbied their city council to say, hey, you should put a binding referendum on the ballot. Advisory referendums are fantastic for showing support, especially for the state legislative level. But for the city, we want to get binding referendums. So we got that for Evanston, and then we ran a campaign, and that passed with about 83% of the voters saying yes. So that was a big success. That will start in April of 25. So right now, there's now other things we're focused on. So Illinois has, so in the states that have adopted ranked choice voting so far, all of them have done it through ballot initiative. So you might know that Alaska and Maine are already using ranked choice voting. They've had a statewide ballot initiative. Oregon and Nevada both have ballot questions coming up in November of 24 as well. So they might be the next two to do that. We don't have that option we're just gonna have to convince the state legislature to get ranked choice voting for our statewide and federal elections and everything. So every year we've been working on introducing bills and kind of, pushing that and keeping it in their mind. So what came out of this legislative session is they're putting together an RCV task force where they're basically going to be looking into the logistics of implementation. Like, what's that going to cost to make it so all machines across Illinois are RCV enabled? What is this, how many places do we have to switch the machines? How many already have ones that are ready? What does the voter education look like? Things like that, that are important questions if they were to adopt this statewide. So we think that's a good first step for our statewide implementation. And hopefully the work on that is wrapped up by the end of next spring. And then right now a huge focus for us is just bringing ranked choice voting to more municipalities. So in Illinois, any municipality that's home rule, they have the ability to get ranked choice voting for their city by way of a binding voter referendum. So that's what we did in Evanston, and that's what we're looking to do in more cities. And we can do that either by convincing the city council, the village board, whatever, to put it on the ballot, or if we don't think that's going to be an option, if they just don't care, or maybe they, they're neutral but they're not going to put it on the ballot, then we could do it by way of petition if we get enough petition signatures for that, which unfortunately is quite a bit more than 15 generally. but we're growing our volunteer base everywhere, and if we are targeting a city, we're always going to be working with local groups who actively want that and want to help with it. So that helps us to have enough manpower for something like that. But yeah, right now here's just a list of cities that we're currently actively targeting. We've got groups working on that. And in Naperville, we think we're going to go the petition route. With the rest of them, we're working on talking to the city councils. I put a question mark at the end because, if there are places that anyone lives and someone says, hey, I want to be super gung-ho about this and help get this done, and I know local groups that would love it, we are, happy to look into new places and see if it's another good target for our city. So, yeah, that's my presentation. Any questions? Yeah?
I wanted to ask about Evanston a little bit. You mentioned that April 2025 is supposed to take effect with that election. What is the process that is now happening in order to make that work? What kind of procedural things are happening down in Springfield? And because I assume that is the precedent maker, that what happens there will be the template that a place like Peoria would want to copy.
Yeah, so nothing actually has to happen in Springfield in order for it to happen. Evanston's elections are run by Cook County. Almost all the municipalities in Illinois have their elections run by whatever county they preside in, including Peoria. So they're run by Cook County. So basically, Cook County just needs to, they happen to use a voting system that just needs a simple software upgrade to make them RCV ready. So we are working with the Cook County clerk and the people there to make sure they get that done, make sure they don't have any questions, that goes smoothly. And by we, I mean like the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center. There are wonderful other groups that we work with that help with this sort of things, so that when new cities adopt it, they're not alone in terms of figuring out how to actually do that. And then in terms of voter education, that's probably going to start in early 25, just to make sure that's fresh in the minds of voters when they actually go to vote and everything.
Is there any budget forecast for the cost of switching
You're saying for the, like,
You're
the
switching
software?
from voting, the software update, the education component.
There's,
It's gonna cost somebody something.
yeah, there's not. The, Cook County would just need to take on that cost. Yeah. But it's nice because Cook County runs, oh gosh, several dozen elections, for all the different municipalities. So whatever other municipalities we successfully bring it to within Cook County, such as Oak Park, it's not gonna be any kind of increased cost after that because they'll already have everything in place.
What kind of an asset would Cook County be in helping convince the other municipalities to go to it, because it's gonna be to their benefit to have everybody on it, because it'd make it easier for them?
Oh, it would be great. I mean, we're not counting on that, because what we know is county clerks are not generally keen to having to change anything. I mean, for them, it's not about, is this a better way of doing elections? It's, do I now have to change?
But you get one, and then you get the second one, and maybe a third one.
Yeah.
And then maybe they would be recommending that they go that way to make it that much easier. I'm just supposing.
It would be really great if that happened. Yeah, we're not counting on it, but we could get lucky in that we could end up having a great ally.
I'll put some bugs in their ears.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah. How are we doing on time? Yep, cool, yeah, okay, so I think it's about time, so thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, Rebecca, you're here until the end in case people have questions?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, in case people have questions, and we'll take a few moments here if people want to get any water, any apple cider cookies before I get started for the last 30 minutes, but if anybody needs to run to the bathroom, feel free to do so, and then we'll regroup and take a moment to breathe. Wonderful, I was wondering, okay, great. We will also, we'll talk about afterward, or are you wanting to stay until the end? Okay, great. So it's, you put it all on, you put it all on the ballot to, for the voter, you only have to come out to one. Yeah. No, yeah, I see. Yep, it's just all super, I think the rest. Yeah.
Really loved your.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I can't remember, were you one who knew about it?
No. I don't know anything about it, so I really think it's
Awesome.
I think that will actually use where at least people say, wow, this is what I do now. I've got 3 votes to play with. And it trying to keep that.
Oh, awesome. Good to meet you.
Appreciate your
Yeah.
efforts. That's a colorful slide.
I'm all about color.
Yeah, I know, I need a little break
Where are
too.
you a teacher?
I teach sometimes at North Central College in Naperville.
Okay. I'm out that way, I'm in Woodard.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Not far at all.
Yeah, let me know
Yeah, well, I live in Mountain, I live in the city, but let's move to park, they have a good event right before Halloween. It's like the whole community event. The casket races? Yeah, or yes. Well, the casket races. Yep. Yep, we just moved there. We lived in a two-flat, so somebody on the first floor, and they said they do, skeleton decoration, so we're trying to figure
Like the
that
whole
out.
town.
Yes. It's a big deal. Yep, but yeah, we should get together though sometime.
I'll probably be petitioning.
Oh, okay,
We'll try to
great.
get our petitions there.
Well, nice.
Water district.
Okay, yeah. Well, I will probably be there, as long as it's close to the end of the month. October already feels like it's a lot. So, yeah.
Booking a lot.
Absolutely. So, yes, please, but I'll message you, and then if you are there, I'll hope to see you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, nice meeting you. I think, were you the one who approved, I requested access for the petition?
Yeah.
So,
I saw
you're
your.
getting lots of those messages.
I got the changes too.
Seems like it's a way to try to get,
Oh, yes, so yeah, you can change it, yes, yes.
as opposed to
Yes, so then people write, yes, and that'll be helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you.
Learning a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure, but it's great, all the information is great.
Yeah,
So
it's
super
helpful.
helpful. Yes. Wow.
reduce the chance for the license that we seem to have.
Yeah.
Information comes out.
It's been very helpful.
Do it wherever we can.
You know,
It's low stakes.
Better than 50,000.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what we're talking about. I'm hoping that Sheldon has been so helpful. You all have been so helpful.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited.
It's a good time.
Yes. Yes. Awesome. Absolutely.
the way they wanted to do it.
Okay. We will get started and we will wrap this thing up. I will bring it on home. Thank you all so much again for being here with us for your afternoon on Saturday. So I like to always give a little bit more information about myself, and anytime I can show a picture of my children. This is when I only have one. It is great. So I am a Chicagoan, mother of two, and a wife, and I'm also a yoga teacher. So that is a little bit about me. I hold a lot of space. I love to share this one as well. So where I live, this is where I lived before I just moved. So I am these purple dots. And the thing that I learned in all of this process when I came into the organization of Change Illinois, I had no clue about a lot of the things that we're talking about. And I'm doing a lot of learning. And so as I learn, I'm like, we have to tell other people this. So I am this purple dot. This is my state representative district here. And just the people across the street from my house, we don't even live in the same district. The people across the street from me, we don't even have the same state senator. So I can't even cross the street. And I believe my state rep owns a building across the street from where I lived as well. And I called his office a number of times about it, but I couldn't even go there and be like, we have the same state rep who is also your landlord, and we need to do some things about stuff happening in your building because we don't even have the same rep. The people across the street with me, we have a lot of things in common compared to the people that possibly live in Oak Brook or LaGrange. Our needs in Chicago are different from the people who live in those areas, but just look at these districts. Look how wonky they are, especially this one. This sort of looks like a snake. This one sort of looks like Texas. You might be remembering your state a little bit there. But this is what we talk about when we talk about having fair maps. And this is why I always want to show this, because I just think it's amazing. So my question always is for people here is, do you know who your elected officials are? All of them. As I've done this work, I'm just noticing that there are so many elected officials. How can you possibly know all of them? So with a show of hands, do you know, and in this room you might all know, do you know who all of your elected officials are? Awesome. Do you know what your districts look like? You do? Okay, so some people do and some people don't. And we have on the Change Illinois website, if I can click here for a moment, we have on the website where you can go in and scroll down here and see the districts that you live in. So this is something great to have when you are looking to say, okay, who is my state rep, state senator? You can click on this link and then see what your boundaries look like and get concerned, but these are things that we don't talk about enough and don't know how they are impacting you, but this is a great tool to utilize and have those kind of conversations. And that's the thing that I really, really am excited about when doing this work, because so many people don't know about these things. So I strongly encourage you to use that tool. My next question for you all is, how often do you all hear the terms redistricting or gerrymandering? Often? That's great. And I think in recent years, I just went to a fest working in Chicago, and I was telling people it was an organization that I used to work for, so they were like, oh, what are you doing now? I said I work for Change Illinois, and then as soon as I said the word redistricting, they're like, yes, right on, we need this. I was like, oh, so people know the language and really wanting to understand how it is impacting them. I don't know if people really know. I should ask a follow-up question, is do people really know how redistricting or gerrymandering happens in this state? I think people always associate it with like states that are not Illinois or in the South, that they talk about it and how the maps are drawn there, but really need to, bring it home that it happens here in a big way. And so that is something that, like Brad was saying, we work on a number of issues, but something that we'll be working on, thanks to the work that the Green Party and Sheldon have done, is more about redistricting and getting questions on the map, on the ballot. So wanting to just give a little more information, I love to talk about, what redistricting even means. Redistricting is a process of redrawing congressional, state, and local districts. Why it's done, it's required by federal law, and all districts are redrawn to account for shifts in population and provide for equal representation. How it's done. Every 10 years, as Brad was talking about, the census data is shared with state legislators. State legislators vote to enact the map. Governor can sign or may not sign. If it is not signed, process is put into the hands of a partisan split commission appointed by legislative leaders. And this is something that we really, need to understand how this process is currently done. The problem with the way that it is happening now is that there is lack of competition. Typically about half of Illinois districts and elections do not have two choices. More than 80% aren't really competitive even with the two choices. So the elections that we have, that there is not enough competition. There aren't enough people running to really understand what is happening. And really get people to vote and have a better voice. Lack of transparency. So when the process is done, people don't know about it. The people in this room know that it happens every 10 years. The people in this room possibly know how it's done. But if you ask maybe 10 or 20 friends and ask, do you know how your maps are drawn? Probably a lot of people don't know. Lack of transparency means public engagement has been limited in the redistricting process. Hearings are announced on short notice, poorly advertised, and our district maps are drawn without us, when this should be a process that we should be engaged in because it impacts us on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. So we should have a voice in this. I think in the last redistricting process, there were 516 testimonies, 60 hearings, 0 public mapping sessions. So there was no public mapping sessions where community members could come and sit and take a look to see how these maps were drawn. And even if people don't have an issue with them, but just to ask questions. So I would want to know, why am I in a district with people in Oak Brook and that's not a community that reflects my community? So just having the space to discuss that. And redistricting, or gerrymandering rather, is an incumbent protection plan. Elected officials solidify their power by picking their voters when they draw the districts. They get to go in a room and they look at the results of elections, and the party in power maximizes the number of districts they can win. Your votes are suppressed. These gerrymanders stifle competition, make it so officials don't have to listen to you because they're sure they will win re-election, and they can potentially result in dramatically different policies for crime, school, taxes, and more than if the districts were fairly drawn. They are making the decisions without you. They chose the districts to be drawn for the people who already voted for them, and then they're not really thinking about you when you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to my neighbor, I'm gonna get my people in a room, and we're really gonna have a conversation about what you're doing, because they're like, well, we're the ones who draw the maps, so it doesn't make a difference. But if it was the other way around, because the politicians really should be working for us, and that is really what we really want to bring home and change Illinois. And so the thing that I always want to bring up is that communities should be kept whole. So what that means, communities thrive as units that work together between neighbors, organizations, and shared values. Like I said, you know, where I lived was on the west side of Chicago. Again, I am all over the place, but in Oak Brook, our community and the organizations, we might not have the same shared values. We might not have the same interests for our communities. So how does that reflect when I need to go to my state rep or state senator? Having communities fractured means it's harder for your ideas to turn into action. It's also harder to hold leaders accountable to you. I don't know all of the people who are in Oak Brook or Woodridge, but I do know the people who are in my community. I do know the organizations in my community. I do know the churches, the schools in my community. So if I would have an easier time going to those places and talking about the issues that impact all of us, because we work, we live, we eat, all in that area, and then we could go to those legislators and have a conversation. But it's not the same if my district is wide, if it's vast, and things like that. When elected officials choose their voters, they protect themselves and sacrifice your collective needs and wants. It is about them. And I love to show this, is that this is a community, this is a district, and then we have a district that's right split in the middle. And this is not a community of interest. This is a great example of it. It's not as wonky as some of the other maps, but just to see this district that is split in the middle of a community, again, this shows that politicians are drawing these maps, not making a lot of sense for their needs, not based on the needs of community.
Schafer, can you
Yes.
say please when that map was made and what, that's 17th district there, what?
This is from the most recent census, so this is, yeah. So all of these are the ones that I just printed out from this last census.
I think that those are state legislative, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Yep, yep. And so the thing that I want people to remember, and going back to the work that Sheldon talked about, is that we are trying to change things. And so the thing that I want people to remember is that together we change. A lot of things are happening in this state, but the only way that we can make a change is together. It's to having spaces like this, is to collaborating and learning from one another. And with Change Illinois, we seek to create government that celebrate and reward integrity, openness, efficiency, electoral competition, and civic participation, and we need all of your help. And I think all of the speakers that we have heard from today, that is our goal. And again, it is not about one issue being more important than another. All of these issues are very important, and it's time for things to look a little different. And so some of the work that I'm doing is trying to educate voters, and this is an event that we did last week in Chicago. It was called Pedal for Change, and so we rode through a ward in Chicago, and I think maps is one thing, to look at it on a map and see things looking very weird and having those districts, but we rode through the 27th ward in Chicago on bikes, and we started in Humboldt Park, which is a very impoverished neighborhood, and rode through the district to Fulton Market, which is a very up and coming neighborhood. And so it was such a great visual to see that as you ride your bike through this neighborhood. We stopped at a location in Rockwell Gardens, which is a former housing project, and I saw a kid coming down the street going to play basketball. They were going to a basketball court that there was grass coming up through the cement, the hoops were broken, and I said, take a look, we're all in the same ward, it's the 27th ward. Where we're going to ride our bikes, there are new basketball courts, there are pickleball courts, they just repaved, they had festivals here, but this all has the same alder person. The person who is over this area is the same, and so these are the kind of activities and events like this that we want to do so people can understand how the maps and the legislators, the things that they do are really impacting us on a micro level. Yeah.
Well, and with an example like that is part of why that's bad, because the alder can then talk about how great his ward is doing, because he's got bougie Fulton Market, and he doesn't even have to address the rest, because he can show some nice numbers.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you can see the development as soon as, like, it's such a good visual that when we were in Humboldt, you didn't see things like cranes and a lot of construction happening, but as soon as you get to Fulton Market, you see those kind of things, and that happens throughout the state as well. But having that visual, you know, the needs of different communities all over the state are not the same as each other, and you also want to be able to reach out and connect with communities, which is very important. And so the next big thing that we're working on, that we will be working on this year and upcoming year, that is getting on the ballot. So Sheldon has the blueprint, and I will be calling Sheldon and emailing him until April or probably November. So Sheldon, just be prepared to hear from me all of the time, because what they have done in Peoria, we really hope to get on the ballot with township questions in 6 areas, well, in 7 townships, I want to say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 townships that we're trying to get on the ballot. We want to do suburban Cook, Southern Illinois, Western Illinois, Eastern and Central Illinois. And so a lot of the work that Rebecca is doing, there's some overlap in the places that we're trying to target. Because again, we are Change Illinois, and we want to have those questions throughout the state, so then we can take that to Springfield and say, we've got these questions on the ballot. This is what the voters want. This is what we need in this state. And it's just, again, building on the work that has already been done. And so through this, we are trying to hire regional organizers in each area of the state, hoping to get people who are connected to community, who already know the ins and outs. Maybe they have a relationship with people who are on the city council or in the township, and that they can have those conversations with. But we hope to go to the people who are experts in their community to help us get questions on the ballot for 2024. And so with that process, like I said, we're hiring
Each region's gonna work on getting questions in just that
in that township.
Okay.
In that township. So if you know people who are in those areas, please let me know. We will pay those people. They will work 10 hours per week. And then, so it is someone who, you know, might be retired or might be looking for supplemental income, but also someone who is engaged with community. I think that's very important, because again, they know the intricacies of those communities. In that process, we'll meet with folks and to train them to how to go to that township meeting, what Robert's Rules of Order look like, how to approach those meetings with the township clerk, how to engage and build relationships in community, how to get those petitions, things like that. And we'll be looking for volunteers to help get petitions as well, and also always to help make this work possible, our donors to really support and grow this. This is something very exciting, and I've just been with Change Illinois since March, And this was one of the first things that we talked about when I came on. And so really learning from the work that was done with the Green Party, and honestly, I just can't say enough about how many tools that the Green Party has that is like, here you go and do this, and that has been really helpful. But this, we really want to be able to take this to those state reps, to our state legislators, and say, the citizens want this. And we've been really, strategic about the places that we chose. We are going to places that we do already have relationships, whether board members or volunteers or organizers that we know. We're also going to places, so we're looking at Oak Park and Proviso Township, and those are places that we know that we have some political tension possibly with Don Harmon and Chris Welch. Would you say tension, or just maybe not? They're not our biggest fans, but we want them to know that the people in their townships really do want this to happen. And so that is why we have chosen those spaces and places. And the things that we want people to do. So like coming into this, I hope that everything that you have taken, not only from me, but from everyone that you've heard here, that you will take this information and tell other people about it.